Hey dudes, and welcome back to the Bantz. As always, I am your host, the Bantz. And here we are, the end of once again another week. It's finally Friday, and that means, of course, that it's time for our second What's Happening in Fashion for the week, so let's just get right into it. And of course, first up we have our headlines for the day. And starting us off, designer Hiroki Nakamura, obviously of Visvim fame, has finally announced that the US is getting its first Visvim store, and this store is going to be in downtown LA. And I do have to say that even though I don't live anywhere near LA anymore, I am still very happy to see this store open up and really just regard it as a better late than never move. And even though, yes, Visvim nowadays is definitely more readily available than it's ever been, especially compared to a decade plus ago, the fact of the matter is that there's never been a store that's been dedicated to it, had everything that the brand has had to offer, just bits and pieces, even in today's standards. And for those of you that do want to point out the WMV store that is in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and has been for a couple years now, let me remind you, in fact, that that is specifically a women's only Visvim store. So just a quick shout out here once again to Hiroki. Really happy to see this storefront finally come to US shores, and am really excited to see how it looks on the inside. Then, in a rather stunning bit of news, it was just announced that legendary tech designer Errolson and Nike Labs ACG line will be parting ways after this next coming season. And although at this point there's still not a lot of information known about this store yet, I mean, for God's sakes, the main source of all this was Techie Latex, of all people. Shoutouts to Sound Pellegrino, Marble, and obviously Instatubes, and to you actually, if you know what any of those are. And although Errolson hasn't really added any more information to this story aside from the confirmation, from what we understand at this point in time, Nike is planning to take the ACG label and kind of revert it back to its more classic designs. And what they mean by that, whether it mean they take those designs and evolve them into something a little bit more, I don't know, not necessarily contemporary, but more modern, or if they just feel like reissuing those old designs, it's still too early to see, but either way, it's going to be interesting. Really, when it comes down to it, I have to give props to Errolson here, really for just doing such an amazing job over the years with ACG, and what's in store for both of them, both the designer and Nike. All I gotta say is I'm excited to see what's down the pipeline. Okay, and with our headlines done, let's move on to our art stories for the day. And first up, legendary graffiti artist Barry McGee has just opened his newest exhibit in Santa Barbara, California, and really just wonderful pieces as always from the master in both his more abstract forms and then highly technical pattern forms. If you are a fan of his, definitely check out this gallery, and if you can make it out to the exhibit, I definitely would. Then the Digital Art Museum in Tokyo, Japan just opened, and currently is the biggest interactive digital art museum of its kind, filled with many different styles, different computer programs, and hundreds of projectors. Even though the images here don't really do it much justice, I still think that everybody should take a look at them. And lastly, artist Daniele Papulis showed off some of his newest paper sculptures, and these are just phenomenal. For as many times in the past as I've talked about different mediums being used in super creative ways, I think this by far and above trumps all of them. These are just magnificent, and if you are even the slightest fan of art or art sculpture, then definitely check these out. Alright, and now moving into our fashion stories for the day. First up, brand story MFG showed off their Spring Summer 2019 lookbook, and I really enjoyed it. For those of you somewhat new to the brand, let me give you a quick rundown on them. Story MFG is really well known for doing more heritage style silhouettes with a really big emphasis on quality in the pieces themselves. The quality here coming from insanely high quality materials and fabrics, as well as colors that come from their own in-house dye process, where they use natural methods featuring things like fruit and flowers and plants and other things like that. And although their pieces and seasons tend to follow a very consistent, although albeit very well done style, here we see a pretty large divergence from that. Instead of seeing their more traditional Western heritage and workwear silhouettes, we're seeing a lot more silhouettes inspired by Eastern and even mainland Asia here. And instead of seeing the more bold and beautiful monochrome colors and outfits we've come to know and love from the brand, we're seeing those colors still there, but done more in a patchwork sort of way, more in a pattern or print sort of way, even done in some embroidery to an extent. This whole collection really feels like an homage to Capital. I mean, I would even consider this a Capital Junior, if you will. The only real thing splitting that from a mainline Capital collection is the fact that there's really no denim here. If you find yourself a fan of more traditional clothing styles, or more ethically done clothing, or hell, if you even find yourself a fan of just really well done colors, if any of that rings true to you, definitely check out this collection, really worth looking into, and I'm really excited to see where Story MFG takes this style in future seasons. Then brand Sulvam showed off their Spring/Summer 2019 collection, and this is definitely a diamond in the rough for me. I know it's a phrase we've talked about a lot on this channel, but really when it comes down to it, there are just so many brands out there doing so many interesting things that just need to work a little bit here and there on touching them up and polishing them. And that's exactly what I see in this collection here. There's just so many interesting little details and so much, really so much interesting cut and sew, and so many nice emphasis on fabrics that are just stunning, and yet it all just becomes very muddled in this lookbook. For example, when you take a really nice design aesthetic and then throw it right next to a very interesting piece of cut and sew, it becomes hard for me to just focus on one or the other. Or if you're really trying to emphasize how just kind of delicate or intricate your fabrics are, don't go matching it up with these really vibrant colors, because that's what draws my eye in instead. But overall, there are some very nice and interesting ideas in this lookbook. And if you are a fan of fashion, and specifically fashion design, definitely check this out. Some of it is actually very inspirational stuff. Then brand Ignored Prayer showed off their newest lookbook from Spring/Summer 2018, and honestly, I'm just not a fan. There just really isn't a lot to talk about here, unfortunately. The graphics are very sparse and uninspired, have been used before, and their placements on a lot of these pieces is just really fucking terrible in my opinion. Just because you put a bunch of photos that you like or find interesting on a shirt, cohesive or not, doesn't mean that it's going to come out well. And the praying hands logo. Yes, I get it. I understand that it's part of your brand, but you rely way too heavily on it, and have for a very long time. But I do have to admit, there is actually one good thing in this collection, and it's the fact that they were able to find a graphic that perfectly represents how I feel about it. And lastly, Takara Wong showed off their Fall/Winter 2018 collection, and honestly, I'm just so tired of this. Like, why do so many brands nowadays just have to take and copy and steal ideas from each other? I just don't get it. And the worst part about it is that when people try to copy the masters of their art form, they end up usually just falling short. I mean, let's just count some of the influences here, shall we? We have Undercover and 424 and Undercover and Midnight Studios and Undercover and Helmet Lang and Undercover and Ambush. Oh, and did I fucking mention Undercover? Now, even I will admit that I am being a little bit too harsh on Takara Wong here. But that's not the point. I'm just so sick and tired of seeing so many brands that have the potential to do so much better with so many interesting things just decide to take influences from one another into this whole just fucking echo chamber of bullshit. Honestly, it's just all so depressing. I mean, why even go into a creative career if you're not a creative person? There's plenty, and I mean plenty, of fashion brands already out here being made every fucking day. We don't need any more copies. We need fresh air. We need creativity. We do not need any more of this fucking bullshit. And on that note, let's move into our articles for the day. And first up, Hypebeast put out a surprisingly well-written article on the idea of whether or not these classics menswear fashion weeks will adapt or evolve to include streetwear and or street style and or what is in style currently. And they go into a lot of different factors, talk to a lot of different people, bring in a lot of different insight, and really, if you're interested in the future of menswear, this is definitely worth a read. Then Hypebeast sat down with the designers behind brand Rochambeau to talk a little bit about some of their ideas and their history in fashion. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about them, I definitely check this out. And lastly, Solo Skateboard Magazine did a nice little video interview with legendary skater and designer behind the brand Fucking Awesome, Jason Dill, talking a little bit about skating, his history with fashion, what he's doing with Fucking Awesome now, and if you find him an interesting person, I'd give this a watch as well. Alright guys, and with that we reach the end of our second and final whip for the week. I hope you guys have enjoyed. And as always, if you want to read some of the articles I talked about today or look at some photos I wasn't able to include, I've linked everything in the description down below. And if you are new here to the channel, then welcome. We do these What's Happening in Fashion videos twice a week, every Monday and Friday, plus an occasional other video here and there. So if you're interested in seeing more, feel free to subscribe. Otherwise, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or even just want to talk fashion at all, feel free to hit me up in the comments. I am always willing to talk fashion. And last but not least, as always guys, thank you for watching these videos and supporting my content. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend ahead of you, and as always, until next time.